Welcome to the podcast, The Whole and Complete Woman, where we provide practical tips and strategies for achieving your health, wealth, and relationship goals and desires. Yes, I said desires because God does not put desires in our heart just to tease us. So it is important to me that you are empowered with the tools and resources to not only fulfill your goals, but to create a life you love and create a legacy, because the people who come after us, they are depending on us to pave the way. So I congratulate you for being here. Not only will today's content help your future self, but also those that come behind us. And that looks different for everyone, which I love. Today, we have an amazing guest with us. We're going to talk about the combination of neuroscience and scripture to break through anxiety and anxiety-driven behaviors like perfectionism, control, people-pleasing, avoidance, and overreacting. So we're going to talk about all types of tools and things that you can use as well. But first, let me introduce Dr. Robyn and tell you all about her and how amazing she is. So for many of you, you may be a high-achieving leader. You're often praised for your drive, your discipline, your high standard. But many leaders, including, all of us here, quietly carry something few people see: the pressure to hold everything together, meet every expectation, and never fall short. Beneath those strengths, anxiety-driven patterns can take hold. So perfectionism, over control, overreacting, and feeling responsible for everyone else's needs. Over time, these patterns can lead to burnout, strained relationships, and leadership that feels exhausting rather than energizing. Dr. Robyn Graham is an anxiety breakthrough strategist, keynote speaker, and creator of the CCC Method, a transformative framework that helps leaders break through anxiety-driven behavior patterns and lead with calm, confidence, and consistency. She is passionate about integrating neuroscience and scripture to help high-achieving leaders recognize behavior patterns that appear to drive success, overcontrol, emotional reactivity, perfectionism, avoidance, and people-pleasing, but that ultimately lead to inconsistent leadership patterns and quietly erode trust and strain relationships. Through her dual leadership loop model, Robyn teaches leaders how to recognize these reactive patterns, understand the neuroscience behind them, and intentionally replace fear-based responses with calm, confident, and consistent leadership practices so they can build healthy relationships at home, work, and in the communities they serve. A pharmacist, a certified neuroscience coach, master life coach, and ACC credentialed coach through the International Coaching Federation. So that's a huge certification. Dr. Robyn brings both clinical understanding and lived experience to her work. She is the host of the globally ranked award-winning podcast, The Robyn Graham Show, and the best-selling author of Take Action Over Anxiety to Enjoy Being You. Robyn, we are so excited to have you here.
Thank you. That's sounds all so big and grand and all of that. And I'm really just little old me.
Who is so amazing.
Thank you.
So tell us a bit about neuroscience for the audience that's listening. Like, what is neuroscience? And then tell us how you intertwine that with scripture.
Yeah. So, I hope I can do this gracefully without being too complex here. I try to simplify it as best I can. But basically, the neuroscience is when you think of there's the brain, right? But then we also have our entire being, which God created us with a soul. And within our soul is our mind, our emotions, our free will, and our conscience. And so that mind is very important. Most people think that their thoughts come from their brain. And we hear a lot of people in the world saying, you've got to change your thoughts. It's all about your thoughts. But the reality, there's so much more to us than just those thoughts. And the brain is not actually coming up with those thoughts. Those thoughts are coming from our mind. And that is why it's so easy to have distractions or be inundated with negative thoughts, because the world can influence those. I love in scripture where Paul says it's not a physical battle that we're in, it's a spiritual battle that we're in. Those negative spiritual forces like Satan and his minions can actually influence our thoughts. Social media, what other people say, things we've experienced, all of those things. Those thoughts from our mind then impact our brain and what our brain is going to do. So is our brain going to stay stuck in negative neural pathways? Or if we think positive, or we actually take action to regulate our nervous system and to change those thoughts to positive thoughts, to change negative feelings and emotions to positive, then we can change those neural pathways so that they are on a positive loop, which is going to ultimately allow us to think better, to access our prefrontal cortex, to make good founded decisions and have healthy relationships, be able to take care of our body and our mind and our soul. And so that's why I like to add the neuroscience piece, which is the science behind the brain and our nervous system, and then also scripture, because scripture tells us very, very distinctly many times how powerful our mind is, and that we need to renew it and we need to transform it and not succumb to the ways of the world.
Yes, yes. So tell us a bit about accessing the prefrontal cortex, and are there other parts of the brain that people might be, using versus the prefrontal cortex?
Yes, I know.
Speaking today,
it's a mouthful. I know. So yes, absolutely. So the brain is so miraculously made. I mean, the brain is something that really proves there's God, because no other way could a brain or anything be this complex yet so streamlined in how it works. So we were all created with this brain, and the entire brain works all the time. It's not like anything is in isolation. The brain is always working. It's always on, all of the components of it, and they all have different functions. Back in the day when our ancestors had to be on guard, they had to be alert all the time for danger. The fear center in the brain, the limbic system, where the amygdala is housed, that is where that fear center rests. And so if we are thinking negative thoughts, if we're always on alert, that is always going to be activated. When that is activated, we cannot access our prefrontal cortex, which is our brilliance center. It's where our creativity lies. It's where we're able to make good, solid, efficient, effective decisions. There's also in between that, in the middle of the brain, is the hippocampus. And there is this switch in the hippocampus. And the switch goes two ways, but it's only going to go one way at a time. So it can go to the fear center, or it can go to the brilliance center. What I love about this is that if we practice gratitude, if we are in a state of fear and anxiety, and we pause and we appreciate something, we say thank you to God, we thank our body, we have gratitude for what we are, who we are, and how we are, then we can access the prefrontal cortex. It literally flips that switch, because we cannot be anxious and grateful at the same time.
Oh, yes, that's so true. Yeah. So, what do you think is going on? Because you work with a lot of women who are, maybe stuck in that, that fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think's just going on in society, in the world, or what can cause a woman to, be controlling or overreactive and all of those different types of things?
So, the way the brain works, we all experience life, right? And there are many factors that can influence what we're thinking, feeling, and what our brain is actually doing, even down to the neural pathways. So there's epigenetics, which epigenetics is basically the health of our mothers and our grandmothers. So if when my mother was pregnant with me, she had trauma, or if when my grandmother was pregnant with my mother, my grandmother had trauma, or some adverse event happened to her, the egg for me was already in my mother at that point in my grandmother's womb. And so that trickles down generation to generation. If the mother, say, has a trauma that they've experienced, or maybe it's passed down from their mother, that gets passed down to the child. If the mother is not regulated, her nervous system is not regulated, then there is no co-regulation for that infant. And so then the infant's nervous system does not develop in a healthy way. And our nervous systems continue to develop But by the time we're 3 to 5, if we haven't had that co-regulation, our nervous system is going to be off. And I always use the example of I had a teen mom who had a mother who was basically emotionally abusive to her. So here she is, she's gone through her whole life with abandonment, abuse, whatever. And then she has me as a teen, completely dysregulated. Well, anxiety has been foundational in my life's journey from the time I was a child. So that just gives you an idea of how that can work. There's also genetics. There are over 100 genes that have been isolated that have a relationship to anxiety. Then you also have environmental factors, and we perceive things that happen. So we have a perception, and then from that perception, we construct a reality, whether that reality is true or false. Most likely it's going to be false because our thoughts and our feelings, our brain cannot decipher whether they're true or false. So a lot of times they're misleading to us, right? These things, these facts that we construct. So all of those things can impact, and in addition to any past traumas that we might have experienced, can impact the level of anxiety and fear that we have. If we have experienced traumas, if there is an epigenetic component, if we don't heal from those, what happens is they compound, and then we need to find our worth. We need to find our value. We need to discover a way to keep us safe. And so all of these behavior patterns, perfectionism, control, people pleasing, all of these things, even avoidance, or, all of these things are our brain's way of trying to protect us and keep us safe. So anxiety doesn't define us. Our actions will, obviously, and ultimately those actions will cause either just a level of survival, but many times they end up causing burnout because we're not meant to live with all of that pressure to keep everything together. And it's really not our role to keep everything together and everything perfect. We weren't designed to do that, but our nervous system is trying to protect us, and it's telling us to do that.
Wow. So going all the way back to our grandmothers, because we were in our mother's ovaries. At the time, our grandmothers were pregnant with our mother. The egg for us was already there. So there's generational trauma. There's generational things that are passed down there. And it's so interesting too, just when you even think about generational curses and blessings, like how much this is even can be tied into our biology too. So
and I like to say that it's not, anxiety and fear, that's not a personality flaw or something that's wrong with you. There's an actual physical, biological reason these things are happening, or you're wired the way you're wired, or you're driven the way you're driven.
Yeah. How does a woman, who's listening now, she's thinking, okay, about my grandmother, my mother, circumstances around those births, those pregnancies, and then there may be personal trauma, there may be environmental factors going on, and then she's like, my mind, sometimes feels out of control. I'm always thinking, I'm wanting to make, control everything, and maybe even sees it as like a form of protection to keep ourselves safe. How does she even begin to unwind what is so wired so deeply?
The first step is awareness. Always. We have to be aware of what we're feeling, what we're thinking, who we're interacting with, and how those interactions are going. Are we overreacting versus responding with grace? And many times if someone finds themselves constantly overreacting in situations that matter, whether it's with their children, teams at work, or their spouse, if we're overreacting and not allowing ourselves to pause and respond gracefully, a lot of times that's an indication. Maybe for a lot of people, it's defensiveness. It could be avoidance. Well, if you're someone who procrastinates with everything, why are you procrastinating? Most likely it's because there's this underlying need for everything to be perfect before you hit go. Or there's a fear that's holding you back saying, we're safer if we don't do it. So let's just not do it. Let's just avoid it. Let's pretend it doesn't have to be done. The conversation doesn't have to be had. The project can wait. The speaking engagement can be canceled, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
And as far as like needing to control, it goes hand in hand with perfectionism and wanting to make sure that if everything is perfect, then nothing bad can happen to us. Right. And if we people please, if we make sure that everybody else is happy, then everyone will like us. We won't have conflict. We won't have to have hard conversations. So all of these behaviors are designed to keep us safe. And sometimes they work incredibly well to get us to a level of success. And we tend to praise people who are high achievers, and we praise people who are making sure everything is perfect and great and all of that. But there is a cost underneath, and that cost is to the nervous system. And ultimately, that pressure builds up because we are not meant to do that. And that's when burnout can set in, or physical health problems can become present.
Yes, that's my area.
Yeah,
right
exactly.
There where all the physical health things show up, and it's really a result of trying to keep ourselves safe, like our behaviors that have us kind of going in this automatic response to life. So tell us, if women are in a place they're listening, they're like, okay, yes, that's me. I'm making sure everybody's okay. I'm walking on eggshells sometimes because I want to people please, make sure no one gets upset with me. I want everything to be perfect. Where does she go from here with just knowing it? I can see her right now just kind of like spinning, like, I want to stop these things, but how do I even begin to do this? It's been who I've been for 40, 50, 60 years.
Absolutely. So, I mean, like I said, awareness is key. And once you become aware of these behaviors that you have adopted and these behaviors that have really become part of your existence and who you are today, first of all, I'm going to say, ask the Lord to guide you as to what you need help with in order to renew your mind. And, he's going to guide you. I think going to scripture, you're going to see Bible passages that are going to lead you down this path of like course correction, so to speak. Outside of the awareness and prayer, there are many ways you can regulate your nervous system. And it's incredibly important to regulate your nervous system first so that you can access your prefrontal cortex, because that is where you're going to be able to consciously make decisions and really be aware of what's driving this behavior. Because sometimes we have to peel back the layers. Like, where did this begin? What is triggering this or activating these responses in me? What am I doing when I feel a certain way? Or who am I speaking to? Or what conversations have I had? Or what am I anticipating? But what is bubbling up inside of you in terms of that fear, that anxiety that is driving you to need to keep yourself safe constantly? So regulating the nervous system is going to be key. And there are many, many ways to do that. And I'm sure you've talked about this on the show before, but breath work is really, really powerful. A gratitude practice, journaling. Journaling is equivalent to meditation in terms of helping to heal the brain and helping the neural pathways go from a negative neural pathway to a positive neural pathway. And regarding that, I like to use the example of a Ferris wheel, because when we are in these cycles and we're in this spiral of negative thoughts or feelings, what happens if you think of a Ferris wheel, everybody's excited to get on, and it slows down to let you on. And then it gradually goes faster and faster and faster until it slows down again to let someone else off, someone else on, so on and so forth. But when we are experiencing anxiety, we're not slowing down. We're not pausing to let the negative thoughts and emotions out and the positive in. And so it's really crucial for us to take those steps to regulate our nervous system so we can silence the negative and allow the positive to take root. And that's how we begin to change those neural pathways in our brain that allow us to access the prefrontal cortex. I sound like a broken record, but then from there, we can begin the healing journey. And sometimes it takes identifying what was missing. I've had a lot of clients who their mothers, and not to blame this, there is no blame or shame in this. There's no judgment. It is identifying the facts so we can move forward. But, I've had a lot of clients whose mothers were emotionally absent to them for one reason or another. And maybe it was because their mother grew up with an alcoholic father and they had a lot of trauma, or maybe they were a single mom and they had to be so incredibly busy to even provide for their family. It could be myriad things. But the reality is these women have had a lack of emotional attention from their mother, and it has driven them to take over, to need to control their environment, to make sure everybody's happy so there's no conflict, so that their mother can be pleased with them. The more they achieve, the more they can get their mother's attention. And it could be the opposite. It could be the father, not the mother. But many times I see this. So where did these behaviors begin? And, really kind of going back and identifying, is there a place I need to heal? And that healing could even be, it could be self-acceptance. It could be decreasing expectations from the people that are not able to give us the emotional support we need. And I think forgiveness is huge, because if we're holding on to any resentment or anything, anxiety is going to continue to build.
Yeah, that is so good. And especially the mother part, I think a lot of women that are listening, and I think most people kind of have, ebbs and flows with their mother. And my mother was one that she didn't know how to deal with my emotions when I was growing up, and I had big emotions, and I felt all along the spectrum, but it was very much like just being happy. That's what you need to be. Like if I was sad, she didn't know how to do it. She would tell me to tell, and this is probably something about for neuroscience, whether this is true or not. But she would tell me to take Advil, and she'd be like, there's something going on with your brain. There's inflammation in your brain. This is why you're acting this way, and she would make me take it when I was crying, and of course we know that's not true, but she didn't know any better. And her mother did similar things. And even yesterday when I was talking to her, when she would cry, her mother would give her a piece of bread and put it in her mouth. Like, here, eat this, So it's like, there's all these patterns that are picked up where it's just like, a lot of us haven't even been allowed to feel different emotions and things that come up. So I love that part about where you said the slowing down on the Ferris wheel. And I think that can be kind of hard for high achieving women sometimes to like slow down. There's so much fear around that pause that is so much needed. And even as you were giving the example, I am terrified of Ferris wheels.
Oh, no.
The last time I got on one was in 2018. So like 8 years ago, my kids were little and we were on it. And then every time it would slow down, how it kind of shakes a little bit, it rocks. And I was like, my kids were like having fun. They're like moving and I'm like frozen, and then I just like hit the button, like, okay, we got to get off. We've gone around twice. This is good. But it's almost the same thing, that pause. A lot of women may, have anxiety with even the step that's needed. What do you recommend for that, with just like being okay with the pause?
Yeah, I call it the holy pause, because we can't do anything alone. Like for us, nothing is possible, but with God, everything is possible, right? And for me, I have to just, God, help me in this moment. Help me take a breath. Help me pause. Help me know what to do next. And you've heard, I think it was Oprah Winfrey always, was it her that started the next right step? And then I know Matthew Kelly says it, but it's really doing the next right step, but it's thinking the next right thought. I like to think of the mom, and I've been this person where, you're cooking dinner and you're running through the entire day. What if I had said this different? What if I had done that? What if this team member had done this instead of that? And what if I got that promotion? Well, what if I don't do well in the interview? Your mind just goes, all these what if thoughts, right? What if we don't make it to sports practice on time after dinner? Yeah, it just goes and goes. And then all of a sudden the kid comes running in screaming, something's wrong. And, they can't figure out their homework, whatever. And you just turn, it's like, and you yell in response to them, or, you snap, because, and it's not because of the child. It's because we were running through all of these thoughts and what if and what if and what if. And so we're automatically in this state of, I've got to protect myself. And so we snap at them because we're like, something bad's going to happen and I don't think I can handle it. So, that's such a good indication. But if we can actually train ourselves, and this is not easy, I'm not going to pretend it is. This is work, but it's intentional work and it pays off major dividends with your relationships and just the level of joy and peace and hope that you're able to experience. But if you can pause in that moment and just say, okay, God, I need help to handle this. But it's literally being aware of what's happening in the day to day and catching it. And so, catching those thoughts that you're having and challenging them. Is this realistic? Would my best friend or my husband or someone who knows me, loves me, respects me be thinking the same way I'm thinking about this or about me? And if the answer is no, then changing those. And the more we can do that, the more we can catch, challenge, and change those thoughts, the more control we're going to have of our thoughts, of our feelings, of our emotions, and our reactions to respond instead of overreact. And then the more control we have, the more confident we're going to be and the more consistent we're going to be. So it becomes this trickle effect. It really flips the spiral from a negative to a positive.
Yeah.
If we can journal those at the end of the day, or even first thing the next morning, get all of that happened that felt heavy, negative, get all of that down on paper, and then right next to it or underneath of it, the positive, the reverse of that, the who you want to be. Because what that does is think about how much harder it is to write than type, because we're using those neural pathways. We're stimulating them. So they're growing. We've always heard the brain stops developing around the age of 25. We can't wait for our kids to be 25 so that their brain develops. Well, moms of boys, they're now saying 27 to 29. And I have an almost 27-year-old and almost 25-year-old. And I can tell you they're still not developed. But as brilliant as they are, they're still not developed. We always say, 5-year-old Josh is home. Anyway, boys will be boys. But the point being, we've always thought the brain is like fully developed at a certain age, but that's not true. Our brains are so miraculous that neuroplasticity allows us the power. God allows us the power if we are willing to work on our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions and really lean into Him. We can change those neural pathways so that they're positive and we're no longer stuck in these negative behavioral patterns, these negative responses. And we become happier and we change the trajectory of our family to be more positive, and we break that cycle for the next generation.
I love that. And I love how you brought up the neuroplasticity and even the power that God gives us to be able to change that. I know people that have had massive trauma happen, and sometimes even in therapy, it ends up being like, well, my brain is broken. And I have my own kind of things with talk therapy and what that does to the brain with neuroplasticity and how it, we've got to be moving forward. Tell the audience, tell us a bit about what is neuroplasticity, and then how is this different? How does that work in the brain? And also if we're replaying things versus moving forward.
Okay. So to emphasize what you just said about talk therapy, I do believe therapy has a role and a purpose.
Yes.
But this is what I love about coaching is it takes you from the present to the future. So yes, there may be things from the past, but we're not sitting there rehashing the past over and over and reigniting that trauma or that negative experience. We're evaluating it to see, okay, what is actually true about you as a person? What do you actually already have within you versus going back to the past and try? We can't change the past. Sometimes we do have to work through it and we have to heal from it. But what you just asked is so crucial, because what we think about is what we create. What we feel is what we create. So we all have a belief system, whether that belief system is embedded in a faith foundation or whether it's what we've been taught by our families or previous generations, teachers, friends, whoever, our community. We all have a belief system. That belief system is going to influence our thoughts and our emotions. A lot of times you hear people say, and I said this at the very beginning, well, you have to change your thoughts. It's all about your thoughts. Well, we also have emotions, and those emotions are within our soul, just like our thoughts are within our soul, where they're coming from, right? And then you add the layer of the nervous system onto that. And our vagus nerve goes from our brainstem through our, with nerves all throughout our body. It's a two-way street. 80% of those messages go from the body to the brain, not the brain to the body. That's only 20%. So if we aren't paying attention to what those emotions are, that heaviness sometimes, for me, those emotions always manifest, any type of anxiety manifests in my belly as a very distinct pain. And it's been that way since I was a child. So, but nobody ever knew what it was. Like there was nothing wrong with me, this, that, or the other. It took me getting educated on, what was actually happening with my nervous system and everything to be able to figure that out. So, but with that said, the emotions and the thoughts go back and forth to each other. They influence each other, but then they influence our feelings, which, like I said, our brain is not going to be able to discern. Are these feelings factual or not? And then, but whatever those feelings are, those are going to influence the choices we make, which influence the behaviors, which influence then the world around us, our relationships, the way others respond to us or react to us, whether we can get a team member to do the assignment or not do the assignment, it goes on and on and on. So when we think of neuroplasticity, we think of how the brain was created. And so if our mind is thinking all these thoughts, but these thoughts are all negative, then those neural pathways are going to be like train tracks, or like you see a backhoe or something in the ruts that are in the ground on a construction site, right? Think of the brain as that, these neural pathways. So these are so deep rooted, and the track is just going to keep going. The train's just going to keep going, and it's going to be a really bumpy ride if it's like that. If we can catch those negative thoughts and change them, if we can catch those emotions and understand what's driving them, then we can change those neural pathways. We can make it so that they're smooth and they're healthy. And that train no longer has to be on this just chaotic ride. It can be on a smooth track, and that's how then we can focus more on the positive and get into our prefrontal cortex and have a healthy life based on healthy decisions. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Like so much of what's going on with our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts are then driving our behavior. And then that's just reinforcing like everything that's happening inside the brain, and we're able to basically like reset, retrain all of those things. So it doesn't feel so automatic.
Right.
I think a lot of times it's not even, and it's in that pause that we talked about earlier, where we're able to pause and then start recognizing a lot of these things. And you said that first step of awareness. While you were talking, something came up where you said when all these things are going through our mind and we're thinking, I got to do this. Should I do this? All that chatter that's going on in the brain. Would you consider that someone that is in that parasympathetic nervous system or sympathetic when all that's happening?
Well, I would say they're more in the sympathetic, because that's all your fear center driving that. That's dysregulation of the nervous system driving that. That's not coming from a place of being grounded or confident or from a place of peace. That's coming from that fear center driving this. Your mind is saying, well, what if? And so your fear center is activated now, and you're just going to spiral.
Yeah. That if when you were saying that, I had never thought about it that way. And that's what came to me as well. Because I've all the different type of work and pausing and paid attention and then centering myself in the truth of what God says to me. I'm pretty good at that at this point in life, where I can even outwardly look, like calm, cool, collected. And I have clients that are like that too. Like, no, I'm cool, like I'm good. I go with the flow, but like, what's going on in here, and then like, how is that impacting our nervous system? And really, how much of the day are we still in that sympathetic nervous system, that sympathetic overdrive, and not even realizing it, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. And then,
Um,
all of this influences, and I know you talk so much about this with the hormones and, when we're in that state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, our cortisol levels are way higher.
yes.
And we're not going to be able to function for very long
Yeah.
with levels like that, right? We
Yeah.
need to be able to get sunlight. We need to move our bodies. We need to do the things to regulate our nervous system so that we can have higher serotonin levels. Because even, all the way down to the GI tract, if our nervous system is dysregulated, you're going to have gut issues. And the gut and the brain, this, and I'm sure your listeners have heard
Yes.
you say it. We're so interconnected. And, we
Yes.
have a lot of serotonin receptors in our gut. So that's where a lot of it's produced. So we need to be able to have a healthy nervous system to regulate all of that going from the brain to the gut and the gut to the brain. And if those hormones are off, then we're going to be agitated. We're going to fall more into the trap of the negative spirals. And so we really want to be able to boost those positive hormones. And I like to call serotonin the sunshine hormone, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the happiness hormone. And if we don't have enough of it, and if we're not allowing our body to heal to make more, then we can fall into that trap even more so, where the cortisol is taking over, and then all of our organs and body and everything just light up in the way they're not supposed to.
Yes. Yes. So tell us, what are your favorite strategies and tools that really help women get into just this state of parasympathetic, but also rewiring their brain?
Mm-hmm. So I love my C's, the catch, challenge, change, and then become, have more control and more confidence, more consistency. I think that is such a powerful tool. And I've seen it really help a lot of people. So I always go to that, and that encompasses journaling. So those two kind of go hand in hand. A gratitude practice is life changing. If you can just say a couple of things you're grateful for, and even in the moment when things feel so heavy, so bad, the negative thoughts are just overwhelming you, if you can find something to be grateful for, you can change that. And that's when you're going to be able to go forward better and faster. Movement has been key for me, exercising, and it does not have to be high impact, running a marathon or doing an Ironman. It can be walking around the block, getting out in nature, getting sunlight in your eyes in the morning, stimulating those mitochondria so that, you have the right levels of cortisol in the morning to get you through the day. But then in the evening, if you get that sunset light, it triggers that mitochondria then to produce more melatonin and shut the cortisol off so you sleep better. Sleep is absolutely crucial for our nervous system health, for our brain health. Creativity is incredible. So I've heard so many high achieving women say, well, I don't have a creative bone in my body. Yeah, you do. We were all born with
Mm,
creativity. But
yes.
because of life and because we are so focused on the achievement and overcoming, that we forget to tap into it. But when we can do little things like painting, coloring, doodling, keep a notebook by your side and just doodle when you're feeling stressed. It takes it away. And, allowing yourself to tap into that creativity. And sometimes that can be as simple as gardening or just being outside in nature and watching birds. But allow yourself to drift, allow yourself to dream. And that creativity does help tremendously with the nervous system.
Wow. I wonder how many women listening right now have felt their entire lives since birth that they're not creative, and it may have just been like even generationally, they've been stuck in this, sympathetic overdrive
Mm-hmm.
and literally have not been able to access those parts of their brain because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
even is freeing, even thinking about that, like you said,
Yeah.
like we're all creative beings. God is a creator. We are made in his image,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like it's in there and it's
Yeah.
fun to access too.
Yeah, it is. And I've heard a lot of people, not a lot, I shouldn't say I've heard a lot of people, but just recently I had a conversation, and the woman said she was always told she couldn't write.
Mm,
She had a teacher that told her she can't write. She's a terrible writer.
wow.
And now she is a best-selling author, speaker, blogger. She's writing.
Yeah.
And it is giving her incredible joy and peace. And she's having an impact with the world doing it. But there's a lot of women who have been, they've either had someone tell them that they weren't good enough or didn't do a good enough job, or like we talked about, their nervous system just didn't allow them to tap into that.
I love it. Robyn, I have loved having this conversation with you today. Tell us, how can we find you? How can women connect with you?
Well, many ways, but the best way is my website, and you can access everything about me there. The podcast, The Robyn Graham Show, where we talk a lot about all of these things all the time. And you were a recent guest, and I'm super excited to share your interview with my listeners. And the podcast is there, the blog is there, as well as how to work with me. And also, if anyone has an organization that they think it would be helpful to have a workshop or have me come in to speak, I'm always open for that too. And that's all on my website, therobyngraham.com.
Nice. RobynGraham.com. We'll make sure to link that in the show notes. And then you also have some free goodies on your website too.
I do. And that is at the resource page. So if you go to therobyngraham.com/resources, there are free resources there for you. There is a book about alleviating anxiety by developing healthy habits for a healthy mind. And it includes the C's and all of those activities that we talked about today, as well as another one, just journaling prompts and scripture verses to meditate on.
Love that. So they just got to head on over to your website, go to the resource section, and you can pick both of those up. Tell us also, how do we find your best-selling book, You, Me, and Anxiety?
So it's on the website as well. There's an author page, and you can access the book on Amazon. But if you go to the website, you can click straight through to buy it on Amazon.
Nice. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for all of your wisdom, all of this knowledge about how the brain works and how God created us, and how we can also implement scripture into all of this that we are doing.
Well, thank you for having me. It was an honor to be here with you, Dr. Alicia.
Thank you. All right, listeners, this has been an awesome show. If you'd like to hear more amazing guest experts like Dr. Robyn, or other topics like love, health, wealth, and career, we've got you covered. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or another streaming service, go ahead and follow us. You won't regret it. It really helps us out. It gets the word out about the information we're sharing. And it's also a way that you can help another woman. One of my goals in starting this podcast was to create community and connection. So sharing this podcast, subscribing, liking, doing all the things really helps me in my life mission. Thank you.